You've carried this feeling your whole life. That hot flush of embarrassment when you accidentally hurt someone's feelings. The way your stomach drops when you realize you've disappointed someone who trusted you. The burning awareness that you've fallen short of who you know you could be. You've been told this feeling is weakness. You've been told it's toxic, that healthy people don't experience it, that you should eliminate it from your life completely. But what if everything you've been told about shame is backwards? What if the capacity to feel shame isn't a flaw in your character, it's proof of your honor? What if shame isn't the enemy of your well-being, but the guardian of your humanity? Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most misunderstood aspects of human psychology, embarrassment, the hidden relationship between shame and honor, between your capacity for moral awareness and your ability to feel deeply, authentically ashamed when you fall short of your values. Because the research reveals something remarkable. People who never feel shame aren't mentally healthy. They're missing something fundamental about what it means to be human. You live in a world that has declared war on shame. Self-help books tell you to eliminate it. Therapists work to help you overcome it. Social media celebrates shamelessness as a virtue. You've internalized the message that feeling shame means you're broken, that psychologically healthy people have somehow transcended this uncomfortable emotion. But here's what the psychology research actually shows. The people who don't experience shame aren't the mentally healthiest. They're the ones missing a crucial component of human empathy. Dr. Brené Brown, whose research on shame has shaped how millions of people understand this emotion, made a startling discovery in her work. The only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human empathy or connection. Let that sink in for a moment. The absence of shame isn't a sign of mental health. It's a red flag for the absence of something much more important, your ability to truly care about how your actions affect others. You experience shame because you have what researchers call moral sensitivity. Your nervous system is calibrated to detect when you've violated not just social rules, but your own internal compass of who you want to be in the world. This isn't a bug in your psychological programming. It's a feature, a crucial one. Evolutionary psychologists have discovered that shame evolved as what they call an adaptive emotion, meaning it serves a vital function in helping humans live successfully in communities. Your capacity for shame is actually evidence that you possess what researchers term social cognitive awareness, the sophisticated ability to understand how your actions ripple out and affect the people around you. You feel shame because you have empathy. You experience shame because you can imagine what it feels like to be hurt, disappointed, or let down by someone you trusted. Your shame response is actually your moral imagination working up your brain's ability to step outside yourself and see your actions through the eyes of others. This is not a skill that everyone possesses. The research reveals that individuals with certain personality disorders, specifically those involving a lack of empathy, show significantly reduced shame responses. They can lie, manipulate, or harm others without feeling the internal discomfort that you experience when you fall short of your values. Your shame isn't pathology, it's conscience. It's your psychological system working exactly as it evolved to work, keeping you connected to your community and aligned with your deeper values about how you want to move through the world. Tonight, we're going to understand why your capacity for healthy shame might actually be one of the most honorable things about you. You've experienced this exact moment. You've said something that hurt someone's feelings, and the instant the words left your mouth, you felt it. That immediate, visceral awareness that you've done something wrong. Your face flushed, your stomach dropped, your entire nervous system seemed to contract in response to causing pain to another person. What you experienced in that moment was your moral early warning system activating. And the sophistication of this system is remarkable. Recent neuroscience research has identified the specific brain networks involved in healthy shame responses. When you feel appropriate shame, your brain shows increased activity in regions associated with empathy, self-reflection, and moral reasoning. Your anterior cingulate cortex, IPSC, the part of your brain involved in social pain, becomes active. Your insula, which processes emotional awareness and connects your internal states to your understanding of others, lights up. This is your empathy network in action. Your brain is literally simulating the experience of the person you've hurt, helping you understand the impact of your actions from their perspective. But here's what's fascinating. People who struggle with empathy show dramatically different brain patterns when they should feel shame. Their empathy networks remain quiet. They can cause harm without the internal alarm system that alerts you when you've moved away from your values. Your shame response involves what researchers call theory of mind, your brain's ability to model what other people are thinking and feeling. When you feel shame, your brain is actually running a complex simulation. This is cognitive empathy in real time, MDEF. Your brain asking itself what the other person experienced because of your actions. Dr. Paul Gilbert, whose research on shame spans decades, discovered that healthy shame serves as what he calls a social rank detector. Your brain is constantly monitoring your standing within your community, assessing whether your actions are moving you toward connection or away from it. Your shame response alerts you when you've engaged in behavior that threatens your social bonds. This system evolved because humans are fundamentally interdependent. Your ancestors who lacked this moral monitoring system, who could lie, cheat, or harm others without internal distress, were often excluded from the cooperative relationships that meant survival. Your capacity for shame is actually inheritance from generations of humans who understood that maintaining social trust was more important than short-term individual gain. There's something else remarkable about your shame response. It specifically activates when you violate not just external rules, but your own internal standards. Research shows that shame intensity correlates directly with how much you value the moral domain you violated. If honesty is deeply important to you, lying will trigger a stronger shame response than it would in someone who doesn't prioritize truth-telling. This means your shame is actually a barometer of your values. The things that make you feel most ashamed are often the clearest indicators of what matters most to you about how you want to be in the world. Your brain has what researchers call moral foundations, core values around things like care, fairness, honesty, and loyalty. Your shame system is calibrated to these foundations. It's like having an internal GPS that alerts you when you've wandered off course from the person you want to be. People who lack this system aren't morally superior. They're morally unmoored. Without the internal feedback of shame, they lose touch with the impact of their actions on others and, gradually, with their own deepest values about how they want to live. You've probably noticed that your most profound shame experiences involve times when you acted in ways that contradicted your authentic self. Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken up for someone. Maybe you prioritized your own comfort over someone else's well-being. Maybe you made a choice based on fear rather than on your deeper values. These experiences feel so painful precisely because they represent a disconnect between who you are and who you acted like in that moment. Your shame is your authentic self, recognizing that you temporarily lost touch with your own moral compass. This is why shame researchers distinguish between healthy shame and toxic shame. Healthy shame is specific, behavioral, and connected to genuine moral concerns. I did something that hurt someone I care about. Toxic shame is global, identity-based, and often unrelated to actual wrongdoing. I am fundamentally flawed as a person. Your capacity for healthy shame, the kind that arises when you've genuinely acted against your values, is actually evidence of psychological sophistication. It demonstrates that you have internalized moral standards, that you can take perspective on your own behavior, and that you care more about maintaining authentic relationships than protecting your ego. You've encountered this person before, someone who seems to glide through life without ever appearing troubled by their impact on others. They cut in line without embarrassment. They lie without seeming to feel any internal conflict. They make promises they don't keep, hurt people they claim to care about, and never seem to experience the internal discomfort that would signal to you that something is wrong. You might have envied them. You might have wondered what it would be like to move through the world without the weight of moral sensitivity, without that inner voice that questions whether you're living up to your own standards. But research reveals something important about these seemingly shameless individuals. They're often missing crucial components of moral development. What looks like freedom from shame is actually freedom from conscience, and that freedom comes at a cost that most people wouldn't want to pay. Dr. June Price Tangney, whose decades of research on shame and guilt have shaped our understanding of these emotions, made a crucial discovery. People with healthy shame responses are more likely to engage in what researchers call reparative behaviors. When they recognize they've caused harm, they experience the internal motivation to make things right. Your shame serves as what psychologists call a moral motivator. When you feel the discomfort of knowing you've acted against your values, that discomfort creates energy for change. You apologize not just because it's socially expected, but because the internal tension of having caused harm feels genuinely uncomfortable until you've addressed it. This is profoundly different from compliance based on external consequences. People who apologize only to avoid punishment or social disapproval are engaging in what researchers term strategic image management. But when your shame response motivates you to repair harm, you're responding to internal moral distress. You're being moved by empathy for the person you've hurt and by the desire to realign with your authentic values. Ancient philosophical traditions understood this connection between shame and honor in ways that modern psychology is just rediscovering. Confucian philosophy identified shame as one of the 4 foundational virtues essential for moral development. The capacity to feel shame when you fall short of ethical ideals was seen not as weakness, but as evidence of moral sensitivity. Japanese culture maintains a concept called haji, a form of shame that arises from failing to meet social and moral obligations. Rather than viewing this shame as pathological, traditional Japanese philosophy sees it as crucial for maintaining the social fabric that allows communities to function with trust and cooperation. These cultural perspectives recognize something that Western psychology is beginning to appreciate again. Healthy shame is inseparable from honor because it requires the capacity to hold yourself accountable to standards higher than mere self-interest. You experience shame when you realize you've fallen short not of external expectations, but of your own vision of who you want to be. This internal accountability is what philosophers call moral agency, the ability to be the author of your own ethical choices, rather than simply responding to rewards and punishments from outside. Honor, in its deepest sense, isn't about never making mistakes. It's about maintaining the internal sensitivity that allows you to recognize when you've moved away from your values and the moral courage to take responsibility for realigning with them. Research on what psychologists call moral elevation, the feeling you get when witnessing exceptional virtue in others, shows that people with healthy shame responses are more likely to experience this emotion. Your sensitivity to your own moral failings actually increases your appreciation for genuine goodness when you encounter it in others. This suggests that shame and honor exist on the same spectrum of moral awareness. The same internal compass that alerts you when you've acted against your values also helps you recognize and admire virtue when you see it demonstrated in the world. People who lack this compass don't just miss their own moral missteps, they often fail to recognize genuine honor in others. Without internal moral sensitivity, they may interpret kindness as weakness, integrity as naivety, or authentic remorse as manipulation. Your capacity for shame actually enables you to participate in what researchers call moral communities. Groups of people who share commitments to values that extend beyond individual self-interest. These communities function not because of external enforcement, but because their members possess internal motivation to uphold shared standards of behavior. You can probably think of relationships or groups where this kind of trust exists, where people keep commitments not because they're being monitored, but because they would feel genuinely uncomfortable disappointing others or acting against their stated values. These relationships are possible only among people who possess what we might call moral imagination, the ability to feel shame when they fail to honor their commitments. This is why parents intuitively try to cultivate healthy shame in their children, even if they might not use that language. When a child hurts another child, and the parent helps them understand how that made the other person feel, they're trying to awaken the child's empathy, their ability to imagine the impact of their actions on others. The goal isn't to make the child feel terrible, but to help them develop the internal sensitivity that will guide their behavior even when no one is watching. Children who develop this capacity become adults who can be trusted not because they're afraid of consequences, but because they've internalized moral standards that feel more important to them than short-term convenience or advantage. This is the foundation of honor in its truest sense, the development of character that remains consistent whether or not anyone is watching, whether or not there are external rewards for doing the right thing. You've sat with a friend who is telling you about a time they made a serious mistake. Maybe they betrayed someone's trust, or acted out of fear instead of love, or chose self-protection over integrity. As they described what they did, you could see the pain in their face, not just regret about consequences, but genuine anguish about having caused harm to another person. In that moment, you were witnessing the visible expression of what researchers call empathic shame. Shame that arises not from concern about image or reputation, but from the authentic capacity to feel distressed about having caused distress to others. This is profoundly different from what you might see in someone who lacks this empathic connection. They might express regret about getting caught, or concern about damage to their reputation, or frustration about consequences they're facing. But you wouldn't see that particular kind of pain that comes from truly understanding the impact of your actions on someone you care about. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion has revealed something crucial about the relationship between shame and empathy. People who possess healthy empathy are more likely to experience what she calls appropriate guilt and shame when they cause harm to others. Their empathic capacity allows them to genuinely understand the pain they've caused, which creates internal motivation to change their behavior. This empathy-shame connection works in both directions. Your capacity for empathy makes you more sensitive to situations where you might be causing harm, which means you're more likely to feel appropriate shame when you act against your values. And your experience of appropriate shame, because it includes taking the perspective of people you've affected, actually strengthens your empathic abilities. Research in social neuroscience has identified the specific brain networks involved in this process. When you experience empathic shame, your brain shows activation in what's called the empathy circuit, including the anterior insula, the anterior cingulate cortex, and regions associated with theory of mind. These are the same networks that activate when you witness someone else in pain and feel moved to help them. This suggests that your shame response and your empathy response are neurologically connected. The same brain systems that allow you to feel distressed when others are suffering also create the internal discomfort you experience when you realize you've contributed to that suffering. People with certain empathy deficits show markedly different patterns of brain activation in situations where they should feel shame. Their empathy circuits remain relatively quiet, which means they don't experience the internal distress that motivates most people to repair harm they've caused. This helps explain something you've probably observed. People who seem genuinely incapable of appropriate shame often also struggle with authentic empathy. They might be able to intellectually understand that their actions have affected others, but they don't seem to feel the emotional weight of that understanding in a way that motivates behavioral change. Your empathic shame serves multiple functions simultaneously. It alerts you to the impact of your actions on others, motivates you to repair harm when possible, and helps you internalize lessons that guide your future behavior. But perhaps most importantly, it maintains your connection to your own capacity for empathy. Research shows that people who regularly practice what psychologists call empathic responding, genuinely trying to understand and connect with others' emotional experiences, show enhanced activity in brain regions associated with both empathy and moral reasoning. Your shame experiences, when they include empathic awareness of how your actions affected others, are actually empathy training sessions. This is why healthy processing of shame experiences often involves what therapists call perspective taking, genuinely trying to understand the situation from the point of view of people who were affected by your actions. This isn't self-punishment, it's empathy development. You've probably noticed that your most transformative shame experiences have involved moments when you truly understood, often for the first time, how your behavior impacted someone else. Maybe a friend finally explained how your chronic lateness made them feel unimportant. Maybe you realized that your tendency to give unsolicited advice made others feel judged rather than supported. These moments of empathic awareness feel uncomfortable precisely because they're expanding your capacity to see beyond your own perspective. The discomfort is the feeling of your empathy growing, of your moral imagination stretching to include experiences and perspectives you hadn't previously considered. People who defend against shame often miss these opportunities for empathic development. When someone tells them they've been hurtful, they focus on defending their intentions or explaining their behavior rather than trying to genuinely understand the other person's experience. This defensive stance protects them from the discomfort of shame, but it also prevents them from developing deeper empathy. Your willingness to feel empathic shame, to sit with the discomfort of understanding how your actions affected others, is actually a form of emotional courage. You're choosing to prioritize understanding and connection over self-protection. You're allowing your empathy to expand even when that expansion involves some psychological discomfort. This empathy-shame connection also helps explain why people who are highly empathic sometimes struggle with what therapists call over-responsibility, feeling ashamed or guilty about things that aren't actually their fault. Their empathic sensitivity is so developed that they feel distressed whenever they witness others' pain, even when they haven't contributed to it. If this resonates with you, it's important to understand that having an overactive empathy-shame system is actually evidence of psychological sophistication, even though it can create emotional challenges. Your task isn't to shut down this sensitivity, but to learn to calibrate it, to distinguish between appropriate shame, when you've actually acted against your values, and inappropriate shame, when you're taking responsibility for things outside your control. The goal isn't to become less empathic, but to become more skillfully empathic, maintaining your capacity to understand and connect with others' experiences, while also maintaining appropriate boundaries around your own responsibility and agency. You've carried certain experiences with you for years, moments when you acted in ways that still make you cringe slightly when you remember them. Maybe you were cruel to someone when you were young. Maybe you broke a promise that really mattered. Maybe you chose comfort over courage when someone needed you to speak up. These memories stay with you not because you're psychologically unhealthy, but because they represent crucial learning experiences that helped shape who you became. Your ongoing awareness of these experiences is your psyche's way of ensuring that the lessons they contained remain available to guide your future choices. Dr. John Bradshaw, whose work on shame and personal healing has influenced millions of people, made an important distinction between what he called toxic shame and healthy shame. Toxic shame is the global sense that you are fundamentally flawed as a person. But healthy shame, he argued, is the psychological foundation of humility and the source of spirituality. Healthy shame serves as what Bradshaw called a guardian of your humanity, the internal signal that reminds you of your limitations, your interconnectedness with others, and your need for growth and community. Without this healthy shame, he suggested, people lose touch with their essential need for connection and become grandiose, believing they are fundamentally different from or superior to others. You experience healthy shame when you recognize that you've acted in ways that were inconsistent with your deeper values or that caused unnecessary harm to others. This recognition creates what researchers call cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable tension between who you want to be and how you actually behaved. This dissonance isn't pathological, it's motivational. The discomfort of healthy shame creates energy for what psychologists term moral repair. You feel internally motivated to apologize, make amends, change your behavior, or deepen your understanding of why you acted in ways that contradicted your values. The shame serves as fuel for personal growth. People who lack this capacity often remain stuck in patterns of behavior that damage their relationships and distance them from their authentic selves. Without the internal feedback that shame provides, they don't experience the motivational discomfort that prompts self-reflection and behavioral change. Your shame experiences, when processed healthily, become wisdom. They teach you about the gap between your intentions and your impact on others. They help you develop what researchers call emotional regulation skills as you learn to tolerate the discomfort of recognizing your mistakes while still maintaining compassion for yourself. These experiences also develop what psychologists call distress tolerance, your ability to remain present and responsive even when you're experiencing uncomfortable emotions. People who can sit with appropriate shame without becoming overwhelmed or defensive are demonstrating sophisticated emotional regulation capabilities. Shame experiences teach you about the complexity of human behavior, how good people can act in harmful ways when they're afraid, stressed, or disconnected from their values. This understanding often leads to increased compassion not just for yourself, but for others when they make mistakes. You've probably noticed that people who can acknowledge their mistakes with appropriate shame, take responsibility, and work to repair harm are often the people you trust most. Their willingness to be accountable when they fall short demonstrates integrity that goes deeper than perfect behavior. In contrast, people who never seem to experience shame often create relationships characterized by what therapists call walking on eggshells. Others become cautious around them because they've learned that this person doesn't take responsibility for their impact on others. Your capacity for healthy shame actually makes you safer to be around. People can trust that if they're hurt by something you do, you'll care about their experience and work to understand and repair the harm. This predictability creates the psychological safety that allows deep relationships to develop. Shame experiences also teach you about moral complexity. Real ethical situations rarely involve clear choices between good and evil. More often, they involve competing values, difficult trade-offs, or situations where any choice will cause some harm. Your shame experiences help you develop tolerance for this complexity, while still maintaining commitment to doing your best to act with integrity. These experiences build what researchers call moral imagination. your ability to anticipate the potential consequences of your choices and consider how different stakeholders might be affected by your decisions. People with well-developed moral imagination are better equipped to navigate complex ethical situations because they can consider multiple perspectives before acting. Your shame also connects you to what many philosophical and spiritual traditions call right-sized thinking about yourself. You're neither fundamentally flawed nor perfect. You're human, capable of both great kindness and significant harm, deserving of compassion while also being responsible for your choices and their consequences. This balanced self-perception allows you to engage authentically in relationships because you don't need to maintain a false image of perfection. Others can get to know you as you actually are, including your capacity to make mistakes and your commitment to learning from them. The wisdom that comes from processed shame experiences includes understanding the difference between self-compassion and self-indulgence. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with kindness while still taking responsibility for your actions. Self-indulgence involves making excuses or avoiding accountability to protect your ego. People with mature shame processing can hold both accountability and compassion simultaneously. They can acknowledge what happened, understand the impact, take responsibility, and use the experience to guide future choices, all while maintaining kindness toward themselves as imperfect humans doing their best. You live in a culture that equates comfort with health and discomfort with pathology. You've been taught that psychological well-being means feeling good most of the time, and that emotions like shame, guilt, or moral distress are problems to be solved rather than information to be processed. But what if your willingness to experience difficult emotions when they're appropriate is actually a form of moral courage? What if your capacity to feel ashamed when you've acted against your values is evidence of psychological strength rather than weakness? The research suggests this is exactly the case. People who can tolerate the discomfort of appropriate shame without immediately defending against it or medicating it away demonstrate what psychologists call emotional courage, the willingness to feel what's true, rather than what's comfortable. This emotional courage has practical implications for the quality of your relationships and the authenticity of your life choices. When you can sit with the discomfort of recognizing that you've hurt someone or acted against your values, you remain open to learning and growth. You can hear feedback from others without becoming immediately defensive. You can recognize when you need to change course without your ego hijacking the process. People who lack this emotional courage often develop what therapists call defensive patterns that protect them from shame but also prevent them from genuine learning and connection. They might blame others for their problems, minimize the impact of their actions, or become aggressive when confronted with their mistakes. These defensive patterns might provide short-term emotional protection, but they create long-term isolation. People learn they can't give honest feedback to someone who responds defensively, so the relationship becomes superficial. The person avoids shame, but loses access to the authentic connection that comes from being truly known and accepted. Your willingness to feel shame when it's appropriate signals to others that you can handle the complexity and vulnerability that real relationships require. People feel safer being authentic with you because they know you won't fall apart or attack them if they need to address something difficult. This emotional courage also extends to your relationship with your own moral development. When you notice yourself acting in ways that don't align with your values, your willingness to feel the discomfort of that recognition allows you to use the experience for growth rather than just moving on and hoping it doesn't happen again. Your shame experiences, when approached with this kind of emotional courage, can contribute to what researchers call moral development, the ongoing process of deepening your understanding of how you want to live and strengthening your capacity to make choices aligned with your values even if it's difficult. This development requires what psychologists call distress tolerance, your ability to remain present and thoughtful even when you're experiencing uncomfortable emotions. This is a learnable skill that improves with practice. Each time you choose to stay present with appropriate shame rather than defending against it, you're strengthening your capacity to handle difficult emotions in general. People with high distress tolerance often report feeling more confident in their ability to handle whatever life brings them. They know they can feel difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them, which gives them freedom to make choices based on their values rather than on avoiding discomfort. This emotional courage also affects how you handle situations where you witness others being harmed. People who are comfortable with their own shame are often better able to speak up in situations where they see injustice or harm occurring. They're not as afraid of the social discomfort that might come from taking a difficult stand because they've developed confidence in their ability to handle social and emotional challenges. Your capacity to feel shame also keeps you connected to your values over time. Without this internal feedback system, it's easy to gradually drift away from what matters to you as you respond to external pressures and circumstances. Shame serves as a moral GPS that alerts you when you're moving away from your authentic path. The people you most admire probably have this capacity to feel appropriate shame and use it for growth. They can acknowledge when they've made mistakes, take responsibility for their impact on others, and make changes based on what they learn. This isn't weakness, it's the foundation of trustworthy character. Your willingness to experience shame when it's warranted also models emotional maturity for others, particularly if you have children or young people in your life. When they see you taking responsibility for your mistakes and working to repair harm, they learn that making mistakes doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human and gives you opportunities to practice integrity. This modeling is particularly important because many people grow up in families or communities where adults never demonstrate healthy shame processing. Children from these environments often struggle to develop appropriate guilt and shame responses, which can leave them either paralyzed by toxic shame or unable to take responsibility for their actions. Your capacity for healthy shame is a gift not just to your own moral development, but to the people around you who benefit from seeing what emotional maturity and moral courage look like in practice. The goal isn't to seek out shame experiences or to feel bad about yourself unnecessarily. The goal is to maintain your emotional courage and moral sensitivity so that when situations arise that call for accountability and growth, you're able to respond with integrity rather than defensiveness. As you prepare for sleep tonight, I want you to consider a different relationship with this emotion that you've been taught to fear and avoid. Your capacity for healthy shame isn't evidence of psychological dysfunction. It's evidence of moral sensitivity, empathic awareness, and the kind of internal accountability that makes you someone others can trust and rely on. The next time you feel that familiar flush of embarrassment when you realize you've hurt someone's feelings, pause. Notice that your shame response is actually your empathy and conscience working together, helping you understand the impact of your actions on another person. The next time you feel the stomach drop of recognizing that you've acted in ways that contradict your values, sit with it for a moment. Your discomfort is information. It's your authentic self recognizing that you've temporarily lost connection with who you really are. This doesn't mean wallowing in shame or using it to attack yourself. Healthy shame processing involves acknowledging what happened, understanding the impact on others, taking responsibility for your part, and using the experience to guide your future choices. You don't need to defend against your shame or apologize for having moral sensitivity. In a world that often seems increasingly disconnected from empathy and accountability, your willingness to feel appropriate shame when you fall short of your values is actually a form of leadership. You're modeling what it looks like to be human without being defensive about it. You're demonstrating that people can acknowledge their mistakes and work to repair harm without falling apart or attacking others. You're showing that true strength includes the courage to be accountable. The people in your life who matter most, the ones who truly know and care about you, aren't impressed by shamelessness. They're moved by your willingness to recognize when you've made mistakes and to care enough about their experience to take responsibility and make changes. Your shame isn't your enemy. It's the guardian of your integrity, the keeper of your empathy, and the foundation of your honor. It connects you to your values, to other people, and to your deepest sense of who you want to be in the world. As you drift toward sleep, let go of the cultural messaging that tells you healthy shame is pathological. Your moral sensitivity is precious. Your capacity for empathy is rare. Your willingness to feel accountable for your impact on others is what makes you honorable. Tomorrow, when you interact with others, you'll carry with you this internal compass that helps you navigate complex situations with integrity. You'll have the ability to recognize when you're moving toward or away from your values. You'll be able to repair harm when you cause it and to deepen relationships through authentic accountability. This is the gift of healthy shame, not the crushing weight of believing you're fundamentally flawed, but the gentle and persistent reminder that you're human, that you're connected to others, and that your choices matter. Sleep well, knowing that your capacity to feel ashamed when appropriate is actually one of the most honorable things about you. It's proof that you have empathy, that you have values, and that you have the moral courage to let those values guide your life. In a world that sometimes seems to have lost touch with authentic accountability, your willingness to feel and process shame appropriately is a form of quiet heroism. You're helping to maintain the fabric of trust and empathy that allows communities to function and relationships to deepen. Rest now, honorable soul. Your shame is not your weakness. It's your conscience, your empathy, and your integrity, all working together to help you be the person you most deeply want to be. Sweet dreams.